Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is Jonas Reporters for the 10th of November. Not much of a difference except for the first time in quite a while we actually had a down day. And amazing what a little bit of red does to the volume. Something we've been talking about for, well, quite a bit during this run-up, that it's just been anemic. Did it change much from our reading standpoint? Well, it's a start. I mean, 3.65 on the white NBI. You've got to be above 5 in order for that to be threatening from a short standpoint. And you'd also need to see magenta below 33, and it's riding up there at 36. We knew that there would be some weakness with the steel dipping below cyan at this particular stage. And potentially we could see a rollover of green below red, but no real chance of that crossover just yet. But again, we talked about this before. All these positive extremes will need to get refilled. And the more likely outcome in this particular case was that we would at least come back to the ABM yellow, test that, and potentially, I don't have them shown here, but you can right click and I can show that. You can just edit the ABM and all the different reset lines from magenta, white, all of them are available, and you can just turn them on as desired, depending on what your preference is for that reset number. It's just good to be able to look at that. We've been on this rising gold along with the shakeouts. This is the first lower shakeout, but we're also 28 readings and magenta above 15, which is a warning line, and above the 25 level is definitely overdone at that particular stage. At this particular point in the NQ, it was a bit stronger. It actually reached the ABM and did bounce off of it, and actually getting much closer from those reading standpoints of weakness, and that was just because you saw much stronger weakness in the tech sector, and that really exacerbated the volume, which was interesting. You'll see it on the 5K, referencing what we've shown before. Not a whole lot happening within the euro. It's been a bullish configuration, just hasn't had any spark to do anything without the orange dipping below, and in this particular case, finally getting there. So we'll see if that's able to produce any net jump. But of course, this is going to be the headline there as oil pushes back up towards the highs, and if it breaks out to new highs, then I think that that talk of inflation being transitory probably won't end, and then it'll just be, well, where can they limit it to? And yeah, that's problematic when that becomes the discussion. And of course, we talked about the bounce that was in Bitcoin. We had the long, a brief short, and the long closed out right at the end of that setup, and the decline, well, within expectations. We had all these positive extremes, and we needed to get some action. So we filled the first set of them right here. That's pretty healthy. The much broader one, bigger, that could take longer before that sees anything, but it was pretty clean and rebounded fairly decent. It was actually, it went from pretty positive to literally negative, and then bounced back towards the end of the day. From a 50K standpoint, that short that had signaled from back over here had just been playing out, going nowhere, and now is on the plus side. Let's see if the performance report will tell us exactly where that is. It's just up a little bit, tiny amount. But overall, be interesting from a short side win, because if we get it closer to that overall 50% mark. And here's what I was talking about. So for the first time in week plus, we can't fit the entire day's range in one screen. Whereas before, literally, we could see almost a day and a half. And it started out fairly reasonable, but every time we got a little bit of a sell signal, buyback, but that second phase, and then when the market opened, it just cascaded lower, and that's where we kind of pivoted. And every time we were popping up there, it was on relatively weak general readings. And so even this one wasn't even from a magenta, because we never even had a spike big enough to create it. It was just the classic steel dips below. 35, you've got your red dipping below, and then it was just a matter of weight coming up before that created the nice dip to fill in. Then we started seeing a bunch of spikes of white over magenta, and then it was that final play that took place in this one where the magenta started here, and that one worked out pretty well. And then towards the end of the day, flipped around with the crossover, the early crossover right here. For those thinking about the bottom on the cover, because I always look for that initial pop of the magenta over, and particularly if blue crosses over gray from a cover standpoint. It's like, okay, it pays dividends to be a little bit lower, because I can always re-enter if things were to flip around, like when magenta comes up and it's below that 25 level and pivots down. I usually know I can capture a few extra points on the downside for any pops, but stayed pretty healthy through the end of it. It was modest back and forth, and that's just because we were slightly above 50%. If these setups took place a little bit below 50%, I think they would have produced more selling, but it just wasn't there. All in all, good action, and paint bar looking really nice with all of it, so happy with all of that. As always, though, look for me on Skype chat. Trade well.